I would like to thank for the organization of this interesting event. I will present some reflection concerning our research project about institutional and spontaneous spatial manifestation linked to the presence of refugees, mostly of African origins, in southern Italy, developed with the collaboration of the PhD students Diletta Vecchiarelli. In Europe, immigration policies have produced, housing segregation originated both by the installation of institutional refugee camps and by spontaneous organization of migrants to solve housing needs. In some contexts, such as Italy, Greece, Spain, Turkey, the vulnerable condition of immigrants are useful to establish labor exploitation linked to the agricultural production-intensive systems. Such match has been called the refugiization of the workforce. The research is based on the analysis of two case studies, the Gioia Tauro Plain in Calabria and the province of Foggia in Apulia. The methodology has been based on literature review, critical assess of policy documents and planning instruments produced at the local level, also by field works, including interviews with the key actors and field visit to the informal settlements. The photographic documentation created with the use of a drone by Rocco Rorandelli and kindly granted for the purpose of this research has made it possible to supply to the lack of the scripted material on the spatial phenomenon and the difficulty to realize it. Some of the results of this research has been published and some others are still in elaboration. In the analyzed context, agricultural workers live in very precarious conditions in informal areas known as ghettos, in abandoned farmhouses or in emergency structures installed by the state. They have often been the subject of news reports due to the eviction carried out by the institution or accidents, including fatalities, which occur due to the poor living conditions. Following Picker and Pasquetti reflection on the role of confinement in shaping informal practices, I propose in this presentation an analysis of the close connection of institutional solution for undocumented migrants and asylum seeker camps and centers, and the formation and the development of the informal settlement, starting from the analysis of and pointing out the institutional intervention addressing the labor exploitation and living condition of agricultural workers. I argue that the emergency approach of such solution contributes to maintaining flexible and exploitable workforce. Such spatial manifestation disclose a complex interrelation of economical, juridical, and immigration aspects, of transnational and local dynamics that mix the intensification of agricultural production for the large distribution at international level with local legacy of labor exploitation, such as the caporalato, that is a local illegal form of mediation of the workforce. The need of a flexible workforce and the presence of a large number of legal, unsecure, and vulnerable immigrants. The juridical disclaimer of a legal status for immigrants and their importance as workforce in the agricultural chain. The literature has dealt with the issues of labor exploitation in agriculture, above all from a juridical and sociological point of view. The responsibility of the production chain in the large-scale distribution in continuously lowering the price of raw materials, of mafia-like organizations managing the system of labor exploitation, and the increasingly massive role of refugee at the base of the supply chain was highlighted. The disciplines of urban planning, and on the other hand, has mostly ignored the issue, legitimizing the emergency interpretation that the state makes of this phenomenon and that inspire its intervention. On the contrary, I argue that such events represent an opportunity not only to debate about the spatial feature of the institutional exclusionary and control policies, but also to reflect on the role of planning in questioning such kind of configurations, developed outside of planning instruments and provision in a height regulated context. The first case study is the plan of Gioia Tauro in Calabria. The analyzed settlements are located in an industrial area connected to the port. 5 distinct settlement typology emerged from the field analysis, starting from the installation of an institutional tent camp in 2012. The choice to insert this emergency settlement in a disused area halfway between the municipality of San Ferdinando and of Rosarno, 3 kilometers from the nearest center, has triggered a spontaneous dynamic attraction. Thus, an informal area was born. The slum of San Ferdinando has been originated from an institutional tent camp of 65 tents organized in 2012 and abandoned due to the lack of funds. You can see it in the image, the rest of the tent. The growth of the settlement has been exponential, attracting many of the seasonal workers. They are asylum seekers or refugees, undocumented immigrants, or regular foreign residents without access to better housing solution. These hybrid settlements reach up to 2,000 people during the citrus harvest season and host a series of public services and spaces such as commercial activities, food-related activities, and 2 large barracks corresponding to the mosque and the Catholic Church that are a reference for all the workers in the area. In 2019, it has been demolished by the police and partially rebuilt immediately after. The institutional tent camp, you can see it, the both present in the area, are the most commonly used temporary housing solution at international level for the management of emergency situation, such as the refugee crisis. Today, there are 2 tent camps in the plain of Gioia Tauro. Both are managed by the local administration of San Ferdinando with ministerial funds, especially as regards basic services. The first tent camp, inaugurated in August 2017, is a settlement of consisting 83 tents, which hosts from 6 to 10 people each, for a total of 560 people, including 7 women. The conditions necessary to have access to the tent camp are linked to the legal status of the migrants who must have applied for political asylum or have obtained the status of refugees, or finally be awaiting the renewal of the document. The last consolidated tent city, built in 2018, hosts 154 people in 29 tents. It's not delimited by any fence and does not host services other than strictly hygienic ones. After the clearing of the slum, it was enlarged together with a consolidated camp for a total of 50 tents, which house a part of the regular migrants left without accommodation, which, according to some interviews, are almost 400 people. Here, some week after the eviction, the 4th man in a year died due to a fire. Located in the same area, but within the administrative territory of the municipality of Rosarno, there is a container camp. One of the temporary interventions installed by the administration for the asylum seeker in 2012. Like the first camp has been abandoned by the institution due to the lack of ministerial funds, thus passing to be managed by the inhabitants. Despite this, the conformation of the camp, consisting of 23 residential containers, has remained unchanged. The ever more isolated location probably limited the irregular expansion as it happened in the case of the slum. Even after abandonment, the number of inhabitants has remained almost the same. 100 people with regular residence permits reside there permanently, while the number triples during the agricultural harvest period. They are less concentrated and less visible situation, which however host a fair number of seasonal and substantially workers, are the approximately 80 abandoned and occupied farmhouses disseminated throughout the countryside. These are often buildings in ruins around which immigrants built barracks, hosting more or less 100 people, a number that duplicates in the harvest season. Such solutions are overcrowded and extremely precarious, also due to the lack of a water supply. An example of the problems linked to the local legacy is given by a series of interventions that have been financed and implemented in the area to help improve the living and working conditions of immigrants. Against more than 6 million euros of national and European funds spent, no one of the structures built has come into operation due to mafia infiltrations. The second case study is the province of Foggia, that extends over a wide plain area with a strong prevalence of monoculture of arable land and vegetable production areas, like tomatoes, asparagus, and etc., destined to large-scale distribution. At the date of the fieldwork, August 2019, there were about 10 ghettos in the province of Foggia, of different size and located in remote places, difficult to identify. In fact, in order to compose this map of the location of the settlement, we had to cross off and confuse the indication provided to us during interviews with the key actors. The difficulty in clearly locating the settlement is primarily due to the specific territorial characteristic of the province of Foggia, extended and uniform with few infrastructural or urban reference. The other aspect is certainly linked to the precariousness of these settlements, which over time have been evicted or abandoned to find new and different locations. Let's see the largest ghetto in the province of Foggia. It stands next to the Cara, that is the reception center for asylum seekers of Borgo Mezzanone, managed by the police and by the army. This settlement, called the informal settlement called La Pista, hosts about 2,500 inhabitants. Ghettos are mostly made up of self-built shacks, campers, containers that serve as house and commercial or service premises. These structures are precarious, overcrowded, and very often dangerous. They are totally devoid of sanitation infrastructure with environmental and health problems. Inside the ghetto, there are all services that allow the inhabitants to depend by the outside to a minimum. This aspect underlines a precise strategy of control by the corporals, the caporali, by providing at high price all the services necessary for the life of the worker within the ghetto. So they create a system of dependence and debt that allows them to maintain labor exploitation. The plain of Foggia is also scattered with old abandoned farmhouses, evidence from a process of progressive abandonment of the countryside in favor to urban centers. Some of these farmhouses are occupied by groups of workers. It is not clear whether they are totally illegal or if they have some kind of informal lease between owner and inhabitants. The housing conditions are often very bad. The structures are crumbling, the basic service is absent, and the condition of isolation creates a great dependence on the exploitation system. To remedy the health problem related to the lack of running water, the Apulia region has set up a water delivery service during the summer season. The Apulia region has been very active in combating labor exploitation, has strongly stimulated a law against the caporalato at national level that was approved in 2011, but without ever addressing the problem in a systemic way and proposing mostly sectoral and emergency solution. One example of that is the Capo-Free Ghetto Out project. Casa Sankara was born from this regional program launched in 2014, aimed at dismantling the ghetto of Rignano, but by offering housing alternatives for migrants. The solution were conceived as a refugee camps, showing the inability to get out of the emergency approach. Casa Sankara consists of 10 emergency tents, each of which accommodates 10 people, and of 8 prefabricated modules. It offers hospitality to 250 workers and has reactivated a farm owned by the region with 20 hectares of land that was inactive. The farm now grows wet vegetables, health, and a vineyard. Some of the workers who live in Casa Sankara managed to get out of the caporalato and to obtain regular contracts. On 2019, a further 100 containers adapted to housing modules, each with a capacity of 4 people, were also inaugurated. But is again an emergency solution. The two case studies clearly show how public intervention linked to the management of immigration in the territory become opportunities for the development of informal settlement, which establish a strong dependence with camps. The limits of the field are porous, allowing a continuous exchange between inside and outside. The hybrid translegal nature of the settlement is expressed in many contradictions that characterize the institution informality permeability, such as, for example, in the case of San Ferdinando slum, the electricity and water supplies were guaranteed by the municipality after the abandonment of the official management. The prefecture recognized the domicile for documents renewal to migrants who lived in the slum. Or in the case of Foggia, there is an open passage, a big open passage, and used by everyone from the Cara, in the Cara fence, which makes the two settlements permeable. On the other hand, the constant presence of the police on the place, sometimes to check and fine illegal activities such as market or restaurants, without which survival in such an isolated area would not be possible. From the conceptual point of view, these socio-spatial phenomena seem to accept many definitions without, however, being fully described by any of them. The concept of camp and ghetto, differently analyzed and interpreted by many scholars, are surely important to be explored, such as other reading of informality. Many aspects have been underlined that are central to the discussion. The temporality of camp that become permanent, the inclusion dynamic and contradiction, the lack of agency that has been questioned by many scholars, the tension between control and care that are the two main goals of camps. Once again, the transcalarity of the forces that insist in the phenomenon, the issues of racism in the global north, and the juridical debate about citizenship and borders. Following Frese and Boncane's suggestion to look at camp institutions in their articulation with other global concerns that the mere control of human mobility, I argue that the institution, by resorting the emergency type solution to address workers' housing needs, not only keep workers in precarious and often dangerous conditions, but become conniving with a system of labor exploitation implemented by producers and intermediaries. This is made possible within a framework on immigration, international and national laws that create legal insecurity, and in a political and social climate that rides on the themes of illegality and racism. The agri-food enclaves, as defined by Caruso, are structured in well-defined and limited spaces with intensive production targeting export. Extending such definition in order to address the systemic character of the different interconnected informalities of the settlement, of housing, of transport, of services, labor, economic activities, and so on, that operates in synergy despite the highly regulated context. I have called them extraterritorial informal enclaves. Such term that is quite a recent reflection, define a complex system, aim to define a complex system structured in a specific territory involving many local and transnational actors that through informal practices subsist outside the national law. To conclude, I recognize in the local authorities the responsibility to break with this system throughout integrated intervention that start from a vision of their territories as not necessarily dependent on the logic and the interest that reduce it to an enclave. And thank you.